The night she said, "I need a husband by tomorrow," it wasn't desperation that frightened me. It was the calm in her voice, the way grief had already burned through panic and left something steady and dangerous behind. And when I answered, "Then you'll have to come live at my place," I didn't realize I was inviting a stranger into my spare room or a future into my guarded life. Only that some moments arrive like a quiet knock and change everything if you dare open the door. I had always believed in clean lines, clean apartment, clean plans, clean exits. My place was small but intentional. A couch that faced the window, plants I somehow kept alive, silence that didn't ask questions. I worked from home, fixed things people threw away, and avoided anything that felt like it might stay too long. Then there was Nora. She showed up at my door with a single suitcase and eyes that had learned how not to cry anymore. She didn't apologize for the late hour or explain herself beyond what she'd already said on the phone. Tomorrow mattered. Tomorrow was the deadline. Her grandmother was dying, old-fashioned, stubborn, the kind of woman who believed a life only made sense if it followed certain rules. Marriage was one of them. Nora needed a husband, just on paper, just for a visit. I wasn't sure. But when she stepped inside, my carefully quiet life shifted, like furniture moved in the dark. We laid the rules out like a contract. No touching, no lies beyond the necessary ones, no falling for each other. She said it with a humorless smile. I nodded like it was possible. That night we practiced. Standing in my kitchen, she slipped her arm through mine, stiff at first, then softer. "My husband," she said, testing the word like it might bite. My name sounded different in her mouth, closer. The next morning, we drove to the hospital. She squeezed my hand just before we walked in. Not part of the rules, not an accident either. Her grandmother looked at us the way people do when they see something they've prayed for too long. "You found him," she whispered. Nora smiled. I felt it in my chest. Warm, terrifying, real. If this was pretend, why did it already hurt to think about it ending? I reminded myself constantly, this isn't yours. At night, she stayed in the guest room. During the day, she thanked me too much. We laughed at the wrong moments and avoided the right ones. Every time our eyes met for too long, one of us looked away. She talked about leaving once her grandmother was gone. Another city, another life. I pretended it didn't matter. But the walls were thin. I heard her crying softly one night, grief leaking through the cracks. I stayed on my side of the door, fists clenched, telling myself this distance was kindness. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't loving someone, it's deciding not to. Would you have been stronger than me, or just lonelier? Everything changed when the storm hit. The hospital lost power, roads flooded. We were told to stay put. 2 nights, maybe more. We slept in the same bed because the guest room window leaked and the sheets were soaked. Fully clothed, rigid space between us. At some point, thunder shook the walls and Nora flinched. Instinct took over. I wrapped an arm around her. She didn't pull away. She told me about her failed engagement, how she'd given everything to someone who loved the idea of her more than the reality, how being alone afterward felt safer than hoping again. I told her about my parents, how love in my house was loud and then suddenly gone, how I learned early to leave before being left. Silence settled between us, not awkward, not heavy, just honest. When she fell asleep against my shoulder, I didn't move. Somewhere in that darkness, something fragile began to trust. Before we go any further, take a second to join this family by hitting the subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one of them. I've got another powerful story coming tomorrow, and you won't want to miss it. Now, let's continue. Her grandmother passed the next morning, peacefully. At the funeral, Nora leaned on me without thinking. I was no longer acting. I was there. Afterward, we returned to my apartment, both quieter than before. The purpose of our arrangement was gone, but neither of us said the word end. She cooked dinner. I fixed the broken cabinet. We moved around each other like this was already a life. That night, she asked, "Why did you say yes?" I answered honestly, Because you sounded like someone who needed a place to land. She nodded. And you? I think, I said slowly, I needed a reason to let someone stay. She reached for my hand. This time, it was intentional. When was the last time you realized something mattered, only after it almost disappeared? The next day, she packed. I don't want to confuse gratitude with love, she said, voice steady, eyes not. This started as a lie. I let her go. That was my old pattern. Step back, stay safe. But halfway down the stairs, she stopped. I don't want a pretend husband anymore. I want the man who listened, who stayed, who didn't run. I followed her outside, heart pounding like it had something to lose. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I want to try, for real. She smiled through tears. So do I. She moved back in, not as a guest, not as an obligation, but as a choice. Months later, we stood in the kitchen where it all began. No contracts, no deadlines, just us. Love didn't arrive like fireworks. It came quietly, like a door opening. And this time, neither of us closed it. If stories like this stay with you long after they end, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe and stay with us. And before you go, tell me, do you believe love always finds its way back?